I was finishing my salmon when I heard the first crack. My head whipped around so fast I felt something pull in my neck, but I didn't care. 6 tables away, across the pristine white tablecloths and crystal glasses of the Belmont, I saw my daughter Emma's head snap to the side. Travis had just slapped her across the face. For a second I thought I'd imagined it. The ambient noise of the restaurant, the gentle clink of silverware, the murmur of polite conversation, it all continued like nothing had happened. But Emma's hand was frozen halfway to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock, her mouth open in a small O of disbelief. Then came the second slap, harder this time, deliberate. The sound cut through the restaurant like a gunshot. This time, people noticed. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A waiter carrying a tray of wine glasses paused, uncertain. I started to stand, my napkin falling from my lap, but before I could move, Travis raised his hand again, slowly this time, calculated. He wanted her to see it coming. The third slap landed with such force that Emma's whole body swayed. A small whimper escaped her lips, and something inside my chest cracked open. Then I heard it, that voice. That shrill, self-righteous voice that had grated on my nerves for 2 years. Now she'll learn to behave herself. Sharon Callahan, my daughter's mother-in-law, was applauding. Actually applauding. Her hands came together in slow, deliberate claps, a triumphant smile spreading across her face like she'd just watched her son win a spelling bee instead of assault his wife in a public restaurant. I stood there, paralyzed, not from fear, from the sheer, overwhelming rage that flooded every cell in my body. 3 seconds passed, maybe 4. They felt like 3 hours. I watched Emma start to cry, those terrible, silent tears of humiliation that only come when you're trying desperately not to make a scene, trying to hold on to some shred of dignity while your world crumbles around you. Travis was smiling, not smirking, smiling, satisfied, proud of himself. Sharon nodded at him like a teacher approving a student's correct answer. Around them, other diners sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they hadn't seen anything. Something clicked inside me. The paralysis broke. I reached for my purse with hands that were surprisingly steady considering the fury burning through my veins. My phone was in my hand before I'd consciously decided to grab it. My fingers knew the number by heart. I'd programmed it years ago, never thinking I'd need it like this. Daniel Chen answered on the second ring. Rosalind, everything okay? Daniel. My voice came out calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a hurricane. I need you at the Belmont. Now. Bring a squad car. What's wrong? My son-in-law just assaulted my daughter, in front of about 50 witnesses, and his mother applauded. There was a pause, less than a second. I'm 8 minutes away. Don't let them leave. I hung up and started walking toward their table. Every eye in the restaurant followed me. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. I counted them to keep myself from running, from screaming, from doing something I'd regret. Travis saw me coming. He actually had the audacity to hold up one hand like a traffic cop. This is between me and my wife, Rosalind. Stay out of it. I stopped 3 feet from their table, close enough to see the 3 distinct red marks blooming across Emma's face. Close enough to see her hands shaking. Close enough to smell Travis's cologne, that expensive brand he wore to compensate for his cheap suit and cheaper soul. Take your hand off my arm, I said quietly. He'd reached out to stop me, his fingers gripping my forearm. Take it off now, or you'll regret it. Something in my voice made him let go. Good. He should be afraid. I looked at Emma. Really looked at her. Her left cheek was swelling already. Tears streaked her makeup. But what killed me, what absolutely destroyed me, was the look in her eyes. Not surprise, not shock, just resignation, like she'd been expecting this, like this wasn't the first time. How long? How long had this been happening while I respected her privacy, trusted her to handle her own marriage, gave them space to figure things out? Mom. Her voice was so small, so broken. I can explain. I said something I shouldn't have. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. I softened my voice, but kept it firm. No, sweetheart. There is no explanation that makes this okay. Sharon stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. You have no right to interfere in their marriage. This is exactly what's wrong with women today. You career women, you modern mothers, you don't understand anything about what it takes to make a marriage work. Sometimes wives need to be put in their place. Sometimes they need to be reminded. Sit down. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I used the same tone I use in boardrooms when I'm negotiating million-dollar deals with men who think they can intimidate me. Sit down and be quiet, or I will make you regret every word that comes out of your mouth. Sharon's face turned red, but she sat. Travis, however, stood up, all 6 feet of him, trying to use his height to intimidate me. It might have worked on Emma. It didn't work on me. You need to leave, he said. This is none of your business. My daughter is my business, and you just made this my business when you put your hands on her. She's my wife. She's a human being. And you're done touching her. Travis took a step toward me. Later, I'd wonder if he was actually going to grab me, if he was that stupid. But we never found out, because Daniel Chen walked through the door with 2 uniformed officers behind him. The change in the room was instant. Travis stepped back. Sharon's triumphant expression evaporated. Emma looked up with something that might have been hope or might have been fear. I couldn't tell anymore. Daniel walked straight to me first. Rosalind. Then he looked at Emma, and I saw his jaw tighten. Daniel had known Emma since she was 10 years old. He'd been at her birthday parties, her high school graduation, her wedding. Seeing her face like that, seeing those marks, I watched him shift from friend to cop in 2 seconds flat. "Ma'am," he said to Emma, his voice gentle but professional. "I'm Detective Chen with the Boston PD. Can you tell me what happened here?" Emma opened her mouth, but Sharon cut her off. "This is a misunderstanding, a private marital dispute. These officers need to leave immediately." Daniel didn't even look at her. He kept his eyes on Emma. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened?" Emma's voice cracked. She looked at Travis, then at Sharon, then at me. I saw the war happening inside her. The fear, the shame, the conditioning that told her to protect him, to make excuses, to minimize. I knelt down beside her chair, not caring about my Chanel suit or the restaurant floor. I took her hand. It was ice cold. "Emma," I said softly, "tell the truth, whatever it is. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." She looked at me with those green eyes that were so much like her father's, and I saw the moment she made her decision, the moment she chose herself. "He hit me," she whispered. Then, louder, "He hit me, 3 times, in front of everyone." Daniel nodded once. "Did he strike you with an open hand or a closed fist?" "Open hand. He slapped me." "And you, ma'am?" Daniel turned to Sharon. "You're his mother?" "I'm Sharon Callahan, yes. And this is absolutely ridiculous. They had an argument. Couples fight. You can't just... Did you witness the assault?" Sharon's mouth snapped shut. She looked at Travis, then back at Daniel. "I didn't witness any assault. I saw a husband disciplining his wife." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the other diners, who'd been pretending to look at their menus, stopped moving. One of the officers actually took a step back, like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. Daniel's expression didn't change, but I saw something flash in his eyes. "Sir," he said to Travis, "I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." "What? You can't be serious. This is... Turn around, now." Travis looked around the restaurant, as if searching for support, for someone to tell him this was unreasonable. He found nothing but shocked faces and a few people with their phones out, recording. In 2024, in a place like the Belmont, violence doesn't go unwitnessed. "This is insane," Travis said, but he turned around. The officer clicked the handcuffs on with a sound that seemed too loud, too final. "She's lying. She's hysterical. My mother-in-law is poisoning her against me." Sharon lurched to her feet again. "This is discrimination. You're arresting him because she has money, because she has connections. This is corruption. I'll report this. I'll call the mayor. "Ma'am," Daniel said calmly, "you can do whatever you feel you need to do. But right now I have a victim with visible injuries, multiple witnesses, and a suspect who's being detained for assault and battery. If you continue to interfere, I'll arrest you for obstruction." I helped Emma stand. She swayed a little, and I steadied her. "I've got you," I murmured. "I've got you, sweetheart." As the officers led Travis out, he turned back. The mask slipped for just a second, and I saw pure hatred in his eyes, not directed at Daniel, Not at the officers. At me. You're going to regret this, Rosalind, he said quietly. You have no idea what you've just done. I met his eyes without flinching. No, Travis, you're going to regret it. You just have no idea yet how much. They took him out through the front entrance. Sharon followed, shrieking about lawyers and lawsuits and how we'd all pay for this. The restaurant manager appeared, apologizing profusely, offering to comp our meals, asking if there was anything he could do. I barely heard him. I was focused on Emma, on getting her out of there, on the way she was shaking like a leaf in a storm. Daniel came back in and spoke quietly to me. I need her to come to the station to give a statement. Not tonight. Tomorrow's fine. But we need it on record. Of course. Rosalind. He hesitated. The marks on her face, they're going to photograph well for evidence, but I'm guessing this isn't the first time. No, Emma said before I could answer. It's not. My heart broke all over again. Daniel nodded, his expression grim. Then we'll need to document everything. Every incident you can remember. Every threat. Every time he made you feel unsafe. Okay, Emma whispered. 3 other diners approached us before we could leave. 2 women and 1 man. They gave Daniel their contact information, said they'd be happy to testify if needed, that they'd seen everything. One of the women, probably in her 70s, stopped in front of me with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said. Thank you for doing what I never had the courage to do for my own daughter. 20 years ago, I watched her husband do the same thing. I convinced her to give him another chance. She's been dead for 15 years now. And I didn't know what to say to that. I just nodded and held Emma closer. In my car, Emma finally broke. Not gentle tears, sobs, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I let her cry. I didn't try to fix it or minimize it or tell her it would be okay. I just held her and let her purge 2 years of fear and pain and humiliation. When she finally quieted, she said the words that changed everything. Mom, I'm pregnant. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. How far along? 8 weeks. I found out Tuesday. I haven't told him yet. I was waiting for the right time, and now, her voice broke again. Now I don't know what to do. I looked at my daughter, at the 3 red marks on her face that would be purple bruises by morning, at the terror and confusion in her eyes, and I made a promise. He's never going to touch you again, I said. Never. I don't care what I have to do. I don't care what it costs. He will never put his hands on you or your baby. Do you understand me? She nodded, crying again. I started the car and headed toward my penthouse in Back Bay, not to her apartment. That place was contaminated now. She'd stay with me, for as long as she needed. As we drove through the Boston streets, I realized something. That phone call to Daniel, that was just the first move. Travis Callahan had no idea who he'd just made an enemy of. Neither did his toxic, enabling mother. They thought I was just a concerned parent. Just another overprotective mother who'd eventually back down, who'd eventually accept that marriages have rough patches, who'd eventually forgive and forget for the sake of family peace. Emma met Travis Callahan 3 years ago at a gallery opening in the South End. Her gallery opening, actually. She'd been so excited that night, showing me around before the doors opened, pointing out each piece and explaining the inspiration behind it. She'd worked for 2 years on that collection, abstract pieces that explored grief and healing after losing her father. I remember watching her that night, so animated, so proud, so fully herself. She wore this flowing emerald dress that brought out her eyes, her red hair swept up in a loose bun. She was 29 and finally coming into her own after years of struggling to find her artistic voice. Travis came in about an hour into the opening. I noticed him because Emma noticed him. I watched her posture change, watched her smile get brighter, watched her tuck that one strand of hair behind her ear the way she always did when she was nervous around someone she liked. He was handsome. I'll give him that. Tall, well-dressed, confident. He spent 20 minutes looking at her paintings, then approached her with questions that seemed thoughtful and engaged. I was standing close enough to hear him tell her that her work reminded him of Rothko, but more hopeful. Emma practically glowed. They talked for an hour. When he bought one of her larger pieces for $8,000, I saw her face light up in a way it hadn't since Michael died. Not just because of the sale, but because someone saw her work and valued it. I should have known then. Should have questioned why a mid-level sales manager would drop $8,000 on a painting from an unknown artist at her first solo show. Should have wondered what he was really buying. They started dating 2 weeks later. For the first 6 months, Emma was happier than I'd seen her in years. She called me 3 times a week, bubbling over with stories about Travis, how attentive he was, how he remembered little things she mentioned in passing, how he brought her coffee every morning exactly the way she liked it, how he wanted to know everything about her. I was cautious. I'm always cautious. When you've built a consulting empire from nothing, when you've survived in boardrooms full of men who thought you didn't belong there, when you've raised a daughter alone after your husband died unexpectedly, you learn not to trust easily. But I wanted Emma to be happy. After Michael's death 8 years ago, I'd watched her retreat into herself, into her art, into a carefully constructed world where she didn't have to risk her heart. Seeing her open up again, seeing her laugh, seeing her plan a future beyond the next painting, I wanted it to be real. Michael would have vetted Travis thoroughly. Michael was a corporate attorney, the kind who could smell a fraud from 3 states away. He would have run a background check, casually investigated his finances, maybe even hired someone to look into his past relationships. But Michael was gone, and I'd spent 8 years trying not to be the controlling mother who couldn't let her adult daughter make her own choices. So I smiled when Emma brought Travis to Sunday dinners. I made polite conversation when he talked about his job at a tech company, some regional sales position that he made sound more impressive than it probably was. I nodded when he complimented my cooking, my home, my business acumen, always with just a little too much enthusiasm, like he was auditioning for the role of perfect boyfriend. Sharon came to dinner exactly once. That should have been my warning. It was a month before the wedding. Emma insisted on having both families together, wanted everyone to get along. Sharon arrived wearing a church dress to a casual Sunday brunch, her expression pinched like she'd smelled something unpleasant the moment she walked through my door. She spent the entire meal making pointed comments about women who put careers before family, about mothers who were too busy to raise their own children properly, about how different things were in her generation when women understood their role, when families stayed together because wives knew how to be grateful for what they had. I bit my tongue, smiled politely, poured more wine, changed the subject. Emma looked mortified. Travis laughed it off, called his mother old-fashioned, said she didn't mean anything by it. But I saw Sharon watching me, studying my home, my clothes, my relationship with Emma. I saw envy there, bitter and corrosive. And something else, contempt. She looked at me like I was everything wrong with modern women, like my success was an affront to her worldview, like my independence was a threat to her son's masculinity. I should have said something then. Should have pulled Emma aside and asked if she'd really thought this through, marrying into a family with a mother-in-law who clearly despised everything she was. But Emma was in love. Emma was happy. And I'd learned the hard way that trying to talk someone out of a relationship they're committed to only pushes them further in. The wedding was 18 months ago. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. I paid for it, of course. Emma's trust fund was substantial, nearly $3 million from Michael's life insurance and investments, but she'd always been careful with it, using it to fund her art career while keeping the principal intact for her future. Travis seemed grateful, almost too grateful. He thanked me profusely, held my hand during the father-daughter dance that I had to do instead of Michael, told me how lucky he was to be joining our family. I smiled and tried to ignore the voice in my head that whispered that something was off. The apartment was my wedding gift to them. A beautiful 2-bedroom in Beacon Hill, fully paid, deed in both their names. Emma cried when I gave them the keys. Travis hugged me and promised to take care of my daughter forever. I put the deed in both names because Emma wanted it that way, because she believed in their partnership, because she trusted him completely. I made a note to myself to discuss prenups and asset protection with her, but I never did. I didn't want to seem cynical. I didn't want to poison her happiness with my professional paranoia. The changes started slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice. Emma stopped calling 3 times a week, then twice, then once, if I was lucky. When I called her, she always sounded slightly rushed, slightly distracted. Travis was having a hard week at work. Travis needed her help with something. Travis didn't like when she was on the phone too long because it felt rude. She started canceling our Sunday dinners. She was tired. She had a deadline for a commission. Travis had plans for them. Always a reason. Always apologetic. Always with that slight edge of anxiety in her voice that I told myself I was imagining. Her art changed too. The hopeful abstracts gave way to darker pieces, angular and sharp. When I commented on it, she said she was exploring new techniques. When I pressed, she got defensive. Said I was reading too much into it, said not everything had to mean something. 6 months into the marriage, I stopped by their apartment unannounced with takeout from her favorite Thai place. Emma answered the door in sweatpants, no makeup, looking exhausted. She seemed surprised to see me, almost nervous. Travis appeared behind her within seconds, smiled, welcomed me in. But I felt the tension, saw the way Emma glanced at him before speaking, noticed how she asked his opinion before accepting the food I'd brought. The apartment was spotless, unnaturally so. Emma had never been messy, but she'd also never been the type to arrange throw pillows with military precision. I commented on how nice everything looked. Travis said Emma had been working hard to make their home perfect. Emma said nothing. I stayed for 30 minutes. The conversation was stilted, awkward. Travis dominated it, talking about a promotion he was expecting, about investments he was considering, about how well they were doing. Emma smiled and nodded, but barely spoke. When I left, I hugged Emma and whispered, "Is everything okay?" She pulled back and smiled. Too bright, too fast. "Everything's great, Mom. I'm just tired." I drove home with a knot in my stomach that I couldn't explain. Over the next year, I saw Emma maybe once a month, always with Travis, never alone. Her Instagram, which used to be full of her artwork and shots from gallery visits, became a curated feed of couple photos, them at dinner, them at the beach, them at charity events, always smiling, always perfect, but her eyes looked hollow. 3 months ago, she called me crying. Travis had criticized a painting she'd spent weeks on, told her it was juvenile and embarrassing, said she should stick to safer subjects if she was going to sell her work professionally. She was devastated. I told her to come over. She said she couldn't, said she was being too sensitive, said Travis was probably right, that she needed honest feedback, said she had to go. 2 months ago, I ran into her old college roommate, Jessica, at a charity function. Jessica asked if Emma was okay. Said she'd tried to meet up with her 6 times, but Emma always canceled. Said the last time they'd managed to grab coffee, Emma seemed jumpy and kept checking her phone. Said Travis had shown up to drive her home, even though the cafe was 3 blocks from their apartment. I told Jessica that Emma was fine, that marriage was an adjustment, that she was probably just busy with her art career, but I didn't believe it anymore. I started paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed that when Travis called during our rare lunches together, Emma answered immediately, always apologized, always explained where she was, who she was with, what time she'd be home, like she was reporting to a supervisor, not talking to her husband. I noticed that she'd stopped wearing certain clothes, the bright colors she loved, the slightly bohemian style that was so her. Now everything was muted, conservative, like she was trying to disappear. I noticed that she flinched sometimes when Travis touched her. Just a tiny movement, quickly covered. But I noticed. Last month, I asked her directly. Took her to lunch at our favorite spot, the place we'd been going since she was 16. Just the 2 of us. Travis had a work commitment. "Emma," I said, "are you happy?" She looked at me with those green eyes, and I saw tears forming. For a second, I thought she was going to tell me, going to say the words that would make this real. Instead, she blinked the tears back and smiled. "Of course, Mom. Travis is wonderful. I'm lucky. You don't seem happy." "I'm just stressed. The art market is tough right now, and Travis has been under a lot of pressure at work. His boss is demanding, and his mother keeps calling with these little emergencies that aren't really emergencies, and it's a lot. But we're fine. We're good." I didn't push. I should have. I should have grabbed her hands and told her that I saw what was happening, that I knew the signs, that she didn't have to protect him or make excuses or pretend everything was fine. But I didn't, because she was 32 years old, and I'd promised myself I wouldn't be the mother who couldn't let go, who saw problems where there weren't any, who couldn't trust her daughter to handle her own life. So I smiled back and said, "Okay," and I hated myself for it. That was 4 weeks ago. Now, driving through Boston with my daughter's bruised face illuminated by the streetlights, feeling her shake with sobs beside me, I understood exactly what my silence had cost. Daniel arrived at my penthouse 40 minutes after we did. I'd settled Emma on the couch with ice wrapped in a kitchen towel pressed against her face, made her chamomile tea she wasn't drinking, and called my attorney, Margaret Chen, Daniel's sister, and one of the best family lawyers in Massachusetts. Margaret answered on the first ring. At 9:30 on a Friday night. That's what 20 years of friendship and a retainer that could fund a small country buys you. Rosalind, Daniel just called me. How's Emma? Physically? She'll heal? Emotionally? I looked at my daughter, curled into herself on my cream sofa, staring at nothing. I don't know yet. I'm coming over. Don't let her shower or change clothes. Don't let her wash her face. I know it sounds harsh, but we need photos. Documentation. Everything. I know. I'd built a business empire. I understood evidence and leverage and building airtight cases. I just never thought I'd have to use those skills to protect my own daughter. Margaret arrived 20 minutes later with Daniel. She brought her paralegal, a woman named Susan who specialized in domestic violence cases, and a camera with a timestamp function that would hold up in court. Emma looked at them all and started crying again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of this trouble. Margaret knelt in front of her, her voice gentle but firm. Emma, honey, you have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. Do you understand me? You didn't cause this. You didn't deserve this. And you're not a burden for needing help. Emma nodded but didn't look convinced. That's what he'd done to her. Made her apologize for existing, for needing, for taking up space in the world. Susan took photos. Close-ups of Emma's face from multiple angles. The 3 distinct handprints, already darkening to purple. The slight swelling around her left eye. The split in her lower lip I hadn't noticed before. Each click of the camera made me flinch. Emma, Margaret said softly, I need to ask you some questions. They're going to be difficult, but I need you to be as honest and detailed as you can be. Can you do that? Yes. Has Travis hit you before tonight? Emma was quiet for so long, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, barely audible, yes. The room went still. Daniel's jaw tightened. Margaret's expression didn't change, but I saw her hand curl into a fist before she deliberately relaxed it. How many times? I don't know, 6, 7? The first time was 4 months after we got married. He said I'd embarrassed him at a work dinner by talking too much about my art. Said his colleagues thought I was pretentious. He grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. I wore long sleeves for a week. I felt something crack inside my chest. 4 months. She'd been living with this for over a year, and I'd had no idea. Did he ever use a closed fist? Margaret asked. No, always open hand, always somewhere I could cover. My arms, my shoulders. Once my ribs when I told him I wanted to do a gallery show in New York. He said I was trying to abandon him. Did he ever threaten you? Not directly. But he'd get this look, this cold, empty look, and he'd say things like how much I depended on him, how nobody else would put up with me, how ungrateful I was. After the rib thing, he apologized and cried and said he couldn't live without me, said if I ever left him, he didn't know what he'd do, that he might do something desperate. Classic abuser script. Isolate, intimidate, make the victim responsible for the abuser's emotional state and potential actions. Did he control your finances? Margaret continued. He wanted to. About 6 months ago, he started saying we should combine our accounts completely. Said married couples should share everything. I told him I wanted to keep my trust fund separate, that it was from my father and I wanted to preserve it. He got angry. Said I didn't trust him. Said I thought I was better than him because of my family's money. Did he have access to any of your accounts? No, I never gave him access. But he'd go through my purse sometimes. Check my credit card statements. Ask why I'd bought certain things or gone certain places. If I went to lunch with you, Mom, he'd want to know exactly what we talked about. I remembered those lunches. Remembered how Emma would glance at her phone nervously. How she'd give vague answers when I asked about her life. How she'd leave quickly. Margaret made notes on her iPad. Did he isolate you from friends and family? Not directly, but if I made plans, he'd get sulky, or he'd pick a fight right before I was supposed to leave. Or he'd have some emergency that required me to cancel. After a while, it was easier to just not make plans. Jessica, my college roommate, she stopped calling. My friend Rachel from the gallery scene, same thing. They thought I was blowing them off. I was. Because dealing with Travis afterward wasn't worth it. Did his mother know about the violence? Emma hesitated. I don't know. But she's called me at least twice a week since we got married, always with advice about how to be a better wife, how to make Travis happy, how to not provoke him. Last month, I mentioned that he'd gotten angry about something small. I can't even remember what. And she said that men need to feel respected in their own homes, that sometimes women need to learn when to be quiet. Daniel made a sound low in his throat. Margaret shot him a warning look. Tonight, Margaret said. What triggered the assault at the restaurant? We were supposed to have a nice dinner. Travis wanted to celebrate because he thought he was getting a promotion. But during appetizers, his boss texted him. Someone else got the job. Travis got quiet. I could feel him getting angry, but I didn't know what to say. Then I made the mistake of trying to comfort him. I said the promotion wasn't everything, that he was still doing well, that we'd be okay financially. She paused, touching her swollen cheek gently. He said I didn't understand anything about being a man, about having to provide, about the pressure he was under. Said I wouldn't know anything about real work because everything had been handed to me. I told him that wasn't fair, that I'd worked hard for my career, that my trust fund was from my father's death, not some free handout. That's when he hit me the first time. And his mother, she was sitting right there. She saw everything. After the third hit, she stood up and clapped and said I needed to learn my place, said women like me, women with too much money and too much education, needed to be brought down a peg, said Travis was doing what any real man would do. The room was silent except for the scratch of Margaret's stylus on her iPad screen. Susan had stopped taking notes. Daniel stood by the window, his back to us, his shoulders rigid. Finally, Margaret looked up. Emma, I need you to know something. What happened tonight, what's been happening for the past year, this is not normal. This is not your fault. And this is not something that gets better. It only gets worse. The fact that he did this in public, with witnesses, with his mother supporting him, means he's escalating. He's getting more confident, more dangerous. I know, Emma whispered. I know that. I've known for months. But I kept thinking, if I just tried harder, if I just figured out what triggered him, if I just became the person he needed me to be. Stop! I couldn't help it. The word came out sharp. Emma looked at me, startled. Stop blaming yourself. Stop taking responsibility for his choices. Stop making yourself smaller to make him feel bigger. You are brilliant and talented and kind, and none of this is your fault. She started crying again. Margaret gave her tissues and waited. When Emma composed herself, Margaret continued. Travis was arrested tonight for assault and battery. He'll be arraigned Monday morning. The DA will likely ask for a restraining order. I'm going to file for an emergency order tomorrow, which will keep him away from you this weekend. Do you want to proceed with divorce? Emma nodded. Yes, but I'm pregnant. Margaret's expression flickered. Just for a second. How far along? 8 weeks. He doesn't know. I was going to tell him this weekend. Now, she looked down at her hands. Now I don't know what to do. Okay, Margaret said carefully. That's information we need to factor into our strategy. Massachusetts law requires disclosure of pregnancy during divorce proceedings. It can complicate custody arrangements down the line. I don't want him near my baby. Emma's voice was stronger now. I don't want him to have any rights. Can we do that? It's complicated. Massachusetts courts generally favor some level of parental access unless we can prove he's a danger to the child. But given the documented abuse, the assault charge, and the escalating pattern, we have a strong case for supervised visitation only, and possibly for requiring him to complete anger management and parenting classes before any access is granted. Daniel turned from the window. There's something else you should know. We ran his information through the system tonight. Travis has a prior domestic violence complaint from 7 years ago. Different woman. She filed a restraining order, then dropped it 2 weeks later. The case was sealed as part of a settlement agreement. My blood ran cold. He did this before. Looks like it. I'm going to try to get those records unsealed. If we can prove a pattern with multiple victims, it strengthens your case significantly. Margaret nodded. That's good. Emma, I need you to write down everything you can remember. Every incident, every threat, every time he made you feel unsafe. Dates if you can remember them. Details. I know it's painful, but we need documentation. Okay. Emma's voice was small again. One more thing, Margaret said. The apartment. It's in both your names? Yes. We need to get you a new place. Somewhere he doesn't have access. Even with a restraining order, I don't want you going back there. She can stay here, I said immediately. As long as she needs. Emma looked at me with such relief I wanted to cry. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You're not imposing. You're my daughter. This is your home. It's always been your home. Margaret stood. I'll file the emergency restraining order first thing tomorrow morning. I'll also start divorce proceedings and file for temporary custody arrangements pending the baby's birth. We'll request full custody with supervised visitation only. Daniel, can you make sure patrol cars swing by this building regularly? Just in case? Already done. I've also flagged Rosalind's address in the system. If Emma calls 911 from here, we'll have units here in under 2 minutes. Good. Margaret turned to Emma. Honey, I know this is overwhelming. I know it's terrifying. But you did the right thing. You're safe now. We're going to get you through this. After they left, I made up the guest room with fresh sheets. Emma stood in the doorway watching me, looking lost. I can't believe this is happening, she said. 2 days ago, I was planning how to tell him about the baby. I bought this little onesie that said Daddy's Little Artist on it. I thought he'd be happy. I thought maybe a baby would make things better. I stopped smoothing the duvet and looked at her. Emma, a baby never makes things better. A baby just gives an abuser more leverage, more ways to control you, more hostages to your compliance. I know that now, but I wanted so badly to believe. Her voice broke. I wanted to believe he was the person I thought he was when we met, that the violence was an aberration, that the real Travis was the one who brought me coffee and bought my painting and told me I was talented, that Travis never existed. He was a performance, a carefully constructed mask designed to get what he wanted. How did I not see it? I guided her to sit on the bed. Because he's good at it. Because abusers are experts at finding people's vulnerabilities and exploiting them. You'd lost your father. You were lonely. You wanted someone to fill that void. He saw that and became exactly what you needed. That's not your failure. That's his manipulation. Mom, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart, I know. What if he gets custody? What if the courts say he has rights to my baby? What if he tries to take her from me? He won't. I promise you, Emma, I will use every resource I have, every connection I've built, every dollar I've earned to make sure that man never has unsupervised access to your child. Do you trust me? She looked at me with those green eyes, Michael's eyes, and nodded. Yes. Then try to rest. We have a long fight ahead of us, but we're going to win. I stayed with her until she fell asleep, which took hours. Every time she started to drift off, she'd jerk awake, panicking. I held her hand and talked to her softly, until finally, exhausted, her body gave up and she slept. Then I went to my home office and opened my laptop. I had calls to make, research to do. I had to make sure I knew exactly who Travis Callahan was, where he came from, what he had, what he valued, and where he was vulnerable. I started with the investigator I kept on retainer for corporate background checks, left him a voicemail with Travis's full name, date of birth, and last known employer. Asked for a complete workup, financial records, employment history, criminal background beyond what Daniel had found, social media analysis, known associates, everything. Then I called my accountant, asked him to review Emma's trust fund documentation and make sure Travis had no claim to any of it. Asked him to set up a separate account in Emma's name only for legal expenses. Told him to transfer $500,000 into it immediately. Money wouldn't be an obstacle to getting Emma free. Then I did something I wasn't entirely proud of, but didn't regret. I searched for Travis's employer online, found the company's organizational chart, identified his boss, found that boss's LinkedIn profile. We had 3 mutual connections. I sent a carefully worded message to one of them, a woman I'd done consulting work for 2 years ago, asking if we could catch up over coffee next week. Casual, professional, not mentioning Travis at all. But when we met, I'd make sure she knew that Travis Callahan was not the kind of employee her company wanted representing them, that he had pending criminal charges for domestic violence, that he was the kind of liability that ended up in HR nightmares and litigation. I'd make sure he lost his job, his income, his stability, everything. Because if he wanted to fight me for my daughter and grandchild, he needed to understand exactly what kind of opponent he was facing. I'd built a consulting empire by being smarter, more prepared, and more ruthless than everyone else in the room. Travis Callahan was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I was at my computer for 3 hours. By the time I finally went to bed, I had a plan, and Travis Callahan had no idea what was coming. The call came on Monday morning at 6:47. I was already awake, had been since 5, drinking coffee and reviewing the files my investigator had sent over the night before. Emma was still asleep in the guest room. I'd checked on her twice already. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway. Rosalind Pierce. You bitch. Sharon's voice was shrill even through the phone. You absolute bitch. Do you know what you've done? I took a sip of coffee and waited. Let her scream herself out. There was an art to dealing with people like Sharon. You didn't engage. You didn't defend. You just let them expose exactly who they were. Travis lost his job. His boss called him Friday night and told him not to come back. 24 hours after you had him arrested. 24 hours. You did this. You called someone. You used your connections. You destroyed my son's career because of 3 little slaps. 3! Your daughter provoked him. She disrespected him. Sharon. My voice cut through her hysteria like a blade. Are you done? Silence. Then sputtering with rage. You can't do this. You can't destroy people's lives just because you have money. Travis has rights. He has a lawyer. He's going to fight this. He's going to get his wife back, and you're going to pay for what you've done. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You think you're so powerful, so untouchable, but you're not. Travis is a good man, a good husband, and your daughter is lucky to have him. She's mentally unstable. Everyone can see it. The way she dresses, the weird art she makes, the way she clings to you like a child. She needs Travis. She needs structure, discipline. And when this is all over, when the truth comes out, you're going to lose everything. Your daughter, your grandchild, your precious reputation. I let the silence stretch, let her words hang in the air between us. Then, very calmly, very clearly, I said, Sharon, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen very carefully. Your son is an abuser. He assaulted my daughter in public. There were 53 witnesses. It's on video from 4 different cell phones. There are photographs of her injuries. There's a police report. There's a prosecutor who's very interested in making an example out of men who think they can hit women with impunity. She provoked. There is no provocation that justifies violence. None. And the fact that you think there is, the fact that you applauded your son for hitting his pregnant wife, tells me everything I need to know about why he thinks this behavior is acceptable. Pregnant? Sharon's voice changed, went higher, almost gleeful. She's pregnant? She didn't tell us. She didn't tell Travis. That's his baby. He has rights to that baby. My stomach sank. I'd said too much. Let my anger override my strategic thinking. Emma hadn't wanted Travis to know yet, hadn't wanted that complication in the divorce proceedings, and I'd just handed Sharon exactly the ammunition she'd use to hurt my daughter further. That baby is Travis's flesh and blood, Sharon continued, her voice taking on a triumphant edge. No court is going to keep a father from his child, especially not when the mother is unstable, especially not when she has a history of... I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage at my own stupidity. I'd underestimated her. Thought she was just a toxic, enabling mother. Didn't realize she was strategic, calculating, that she'd been baiting me, trying to get me to reveal something useful, and I'd fallen for it. The phone rang again. Sharon. I didn't answer. It rang 4 more times over the next 10 minutes. I blocked the number. At 8, Margaret called. The emergency restraining order was approved. Travis can't come within 500 feet of Emma or your residence. He's being arraigned this afternoon at 2. The prosecutor is pushing for no bail given the severity of the assault and the public nature of it. How's Emma? Still sleeping? Margaret, I made a mistake. Sharon called this morning. She was ranting, trying to provoke me, and I let slip that Emma's pregnant. She didn't know. Travis doesn't know. Now they do. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Okay, that's not ideal, but it's not catastrophic. We were going to have to disclose it soon anyway. It just changes our timeline. They'll likely file for paternal rights immediately. We'll counter with documented abuse and push for supervised visitation only. The pregnancy actually helps our case in some ways. Assault on a pregnant woman carries enhanced penalties. Emma's going to be devastated that he knows. I'll talk to her. Rosalind, you need to stop engaging with Sharon. Block her number. Don't answer if she calls from another phone. Don't respond to emails or texts. Everything from this point forward goes through attorneys. Understood? Understood. Good. I'll call you after the arraignment. I made breakfast that Emma didn't eat. She sat at my kitchen island, staring at the fruit I'd cut for her, and listened while I told her about Sharon's call, about my mistake. She didn't cry, didn't yell, just nodded slowly and said, "He's going to use the baby to hurt me, isn't he? He's going to try. We won't let him. You don't know that. You can't promise that. Courts give fathers rights, even abusive fathers. I've read the statistics. Women lose custody to their abusers all the time. Not this time. Mom." She looked at me with exhausted eyes. "You can't fix everything. You can't buy your way out of this. You can't strategize around a system that's fundamentally broken. Watch me." The arraignment was at 2. Margaret texted me updates in real time. Travis pled not guilty. Claimed self-defense, said Emma had attacked him first and he was restraining her. The prosecutor presented the witness statements, the video footage, the photographs. The judge set bail at $50,000 and extended the restraining order pending trial. Sharon paid the bail, had the check written within an hour. At 4:30, my investigator called. "Mrs. Pierce, you need to see this. I'm sending over files now. Check your secure email." I opened the encrypted folder on my laptop. Inside were bank statements, credit reports, and a 7-page summary of Travis Callahan's financial situation. He was drowning in debt. $47,000 in credit cards, $32,000 in a personal loan, $12,000 on a car lease he couldn't afford, student loans in deferment that would come due in 6 months. His monthly expenses exceeded his income by nearly $3,000, even before he lost his job. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the bank statements from 2 years ago. Large deposits, $20,000 here, $15,000 there, all from Emma's checking account. Money she'd given him, or that he'd convinced her to transfer for investments or business opportunities that never materialized. $78,000 total. Money he'd burned through in less than 18 months. I kept reading, found more, found evidence that he'd applied for credit cards in Emma's name. That he'd been denied, thankfully, because her credit was locked. But he'd tried. He'd attempted to commit identity theft against his own wife. Then I found the part that made my blood run cold. Applications for life insurance policies on Emma. 3 different companies. Policies worth $500,000, $750,000, and $1 million respectively. All submitted in the past 4 months. All with Travis as the sole beneficiary. Emma's signature on all of them. Signatures that looked authentic to my untrained eye, but that my investigator had flagged as potentially forged based on subtle inconsistencies. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Travis wasn't just an abuser. He was planning something that went beyond control, beyond violence, beyond even financial exploitation. He was planning to profit from Emma's death. I called Margaret immediately. "We need to meet, now. I have something you need to see." Margaret arrived within 30 minutes. Daniel came with her. I'd called him separately, told him what I'd found. They sat across from me in my home office while Emma stayed in the living room, sketching in a notebook I'd given her. Art therapy, she called it. I called it survival. I spread the documents across my desk, the bank statements, the credit applications, the life insurance policies. "Jesus Christ," Daniel said, picking up one of the insurance applications. "This is attempted fraud at minimum. Possibly conspiracy to commit murder if we can prove intent." "Can we prove it?" I asked. Margaret was studying the signatures through a magnifying glass she'd pulled from her briefcase. "These need to go to a forensic document examiner. But even to my eye, these don't match Emma's normal signature. The pressure points are wrong. The flow is too smooth. Emma's signature has this distinctive hesitation before the final letter. None of these have it. So he forged them. Probably. But we need expert analysis to use it in court. She set down the magnifier and looked at me. Rosalind, this changes everything. This isn't just domestic violence anymore. This is financial crimes, fraud, possibly planning something much worse. Daniel was already on his phone. I'm calling the fraud division. We need to open a formal investigation. Emma needs to contact these insurance companies immediately and revoke any applications. We need to freeze her accounts, check for any other fraudulent activity. There's more, I said. I pulled up another file on my laptop. My investigator found Travis's ex-girlfriend, the one who filed the restraining order 7 years ago. Her name is Rachel Morrison. She's willing to talk. The same Rachel who showed up at the hearing? Margaret asked. Yes, but she didn't tell us everything. She was too afraid, too ashamed. My investigator found her through sealed court records and offered her immunity from any NDA violations if she'd give a full statement. I opened the video file. Rachel's face filled the screen. She was pretty, blonde, probably in her early 30s. She looked nervous, but determined. My name is Rachel Morrison. 7 years ago, I dated Travis Callahan for 18 months. For the first year, he was perfect, attentive, romantic, everything I thought I wanted. Then I got a promotion at work, started making more money than him. That's when things changed. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor underneath. He started criticizing everything. My clothes, my friends, how I spent my money. Then the physical abuse started. Pushing at first, then slapping, then worse. The final incident, he broke my rib and gave me a concussion. I woke up in the hospital and he was there crying, apologizing, saying he'd kill himself if I left him. Rachel paused, wiping her eyes. I filed a restraining order. He violated it 3 times. Then his mother contacted me, Sharon Callahan. She offered me $25,000 to drop the charges and sign an NDA. Said Travis was sick, that he needed help, that if I really loved him, I'd give him a chance to get better. Said if I didn't take the money, they'd destroy me, make sure I lost my job, ruin my reputation. I was 24 and terrified. So I took the money and signed. Did he get help? The investigator's voice came from off-screen. No. Sharon told me later he went to 2 therapy sessions and quit. Said the therapist was trying to turn him against his family. She enabled everything, made excuses, blamed me for provoking him. The last time I saw her, she told me I should be grateful Travis had found someone better, someone who knew how to treat a man right. Rachel looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, if you're in a relationship with Travis Callahan, get out. Get out now, because he doesn't get better, he gets worse. And Sharon will help him do it. The video ended. The room was silent. When did you get this? Daniel asked. Last night. Rachel signed a sworn affidavit. She's willing to testify. She's also willing to pursue charges for the NDA violation, because she says keeping quiet almost got another woman killed. Margaret sat back in her chair. This is good. This is very good. A pattern of abuse across multiple victims, financial fraud, forged documents, and a witness willing to break her silence. We can bury him with this. There's one more thing, I said. I opened the final file. The investigator found Travis's financial advisor, or rather, the person Travis claimed was his financial advisor. Turns out Travis contacted this guy 3 months ago asking about estate planning. Specifically, about what would happen to a spouse's assets if they died without a will. Daniel leaned forward. Emma doesn't have a will, does she? No, she's 32. She never thought she needed one. Without a will, in Massachusetts, the spouse inherits everything. Her trust fund, her artwork, her half of the apartment, everything. $3 million plus assets. So Travis gets her pregnant, Margaret said slowly, working it out. Isolates her from support systems, escalates the abuse, takes out life insurance policies in her name, and then what? Stages an accident? Makes it look like suicide? Postpartum depression? The words hung in the air like poison gas. We don't have proof of intent, Daniel said. Everything we have is circumstantial. The insurance policies could be explained away as financial planning. The forged signatures are fraud, but not attempted murder. A defense attorney would argue Travis was just bad with money and made poor decisions. But we know, I said quietly. We know what he was planning. Knowing and proving are different things, Daniel replied. But the fraud charges, those we can prove. I'll take this to the DA. We can add charges to the assault case. That might be enough to keep him locked up until trial. Margaret was making notes. I'm going to file an emergency motion for full custody with 0 visitation rights pending criminal trial. The life insurance policies, the financial fraud, the pattern of escalating abuse. It's enough to argue that any contact with Travis poses an imminent danger to both Emma and the unborn child. Will a judge grant it? I asked. If we present it right, yes. Especially with Rachel's testimony. Especially with the forged documents. This isn't just domestic violence anymore. This is a credible threat to Emma's life. Over the next 3 days, everything moved fast. Too fast. The kind of speed that only happens when you have money and connections and lawyers who know exactly which judges to file with and which prosecutors to call. Daniel brought the fraud evidence to the DA. They added 3 counts of forgery and 2 counts of identity theft to Travis's charges. Bail was revoked. He was taken back into custody. Margaret filed the emergency custody motion. The judge granted it. 0 contact between Travis and Emma. 0 rights to the child, pending full hearing after the baby's birth and resolution of criminal charges. Rachel gave a deposition. 2 hours of detailed testimony about Travis's abuse, Sharon's complicity, the pattern of escalating violence. It was devastating, clinical, unassailable. My investigator found 2 more women. Not ex-girlfriends, but women Travis had dated briefly before Emma. Both reported similar patterns. Love bombing followed by control, followed by verbal abuse. Both had ended the relationships before it escalated to physical violence. Both were willing to provide statements. I contacted the insurance companies. All 3 policies were revoked. The companies were investigating Travis for fraud. One was considering filing criminal charges of their own. Emma's accounts were frozen and then reopened under new numbers. Passwords changed. Security questions changed. I hired a forensic accountant to go through every transaction for the past 2 years, looking for anything else Travis might have done. We found more. He'd used her credit card to buy jewelry. Not for her, for Sharon. $4,000 in charges Emma never knew about. He'd returned Emma's art supplies, things she'd bought with her own money, and pocketed the cash. $1,200 over 6 months. Small thefts. Death by 1,000 cuts. But the worst discovery came on Thursday. The forensic accountant found a deleted email in Emma's trash folder. She'd set her email to permanently delete after 30 days, but this one was 28 days old. Still recoverable. It was from Travis to a private investigator, dated 6 weeks ago, asking for surveillance on Emma, asking for documentation of everywhere she went, everyone she talked to, everything she did, asking specifically if the investigator could obtain medical records. He'd been stalking her, systematically, professionally, building a file on his own wife. When I showed Emma, she went pale. He knew about the pregnancy. He had to know. That's why he asked about medical records. We don't know that for certain, Margaret said gently. Yes, we do. Emma's voice was hollow. That's why he escalated at the restaurant. That's why he hit me in public. He knew I was pregnant, and he knew I'd eventually tell you, and he had to act before I had a chance to leave him. He had to establish control. Had to show me what would happen if I tried. She was right. We all knew she was right. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Travis would face a judge, hear the charges against him, enter a plea. We'd see him for the first time since the arrest. Margaret prepared Emma extensively, told her not to look at him, not to react, not to engage no matter what he or Sharon said, told her to sit still, stay calm, let the evidence speak for itself. I wasn't sure Emma could do it. She'd been having nightmares every night, waking up screaming. I'd found her twice standing at the window at 3 a.m, staring out at the street below, convinced Travis was out there watching. What if he gets out? She asked me the night before the hearing. What if the judge doesn't think the evidence is enough? What if they release him again? Then we'll deal with it. You won't be alone. You won't be unprotected. I promise. You can't promise that. You can't be with me every second. And Travis is patient. He knows how to wait, how to plan. What if he... Stop! Don't spiral. Don't give him power he doesn't have. But I was worried too. Because Emma was right. The justice system failed women every day, released abusers back into the world with restraining orders that were nothing but pieces of paper. Let violent men walk free because their victims couldn't prove enough, couldn't document enough, couldn't be credible enough. I'd seen it happen. Everyone had. Monday came too fast. We arrived at the courthouse at 8:30 for a 9 o'clock hearing. Margaret had arranged for us to enter through a side entrance, avoiding the main lobby where Sharon was reportedly already waiting. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, cheap wood paneling. About 30 seats for spectators. Emma sat between Margaret and me in the front row. Her hands were ice cold. She'd barely eaten breakfast, barely slept. At 8:55, they brought Travis in. Orange jumpsuit, handcuffs. He looked thinner, disheveled. His hair was uncombed, his face unshaven. He scanned the courtroom and his eyes found Emma immediately. He smiled, not a smirk, not anger, a genuine smile, warm, loving, the same smile he'd given her at their wedding, the same smile that had convinced her he was safe. Emma's hand tightened on mine so hard I felt my bones compress. "Don't look at him," Margaret whispered, eyes forward. The judge entered, a woman, probably in her 60s, with steel-gray hair and the kind of face that had seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. Judge Patricia Martinez. Margaret had told me she was good, fair, didn't tolerate abuse of any kind. The prosecutor laid out the charges: assault and battery. 3 counts of forgery, 2 counts of identity theft, attempted fraud. The list went on. Each charge came with evidence: witness statements, photographs, documents. Travis's lawyer, a public defender who looked overworked and underpaid, tried to argue for bail reduction, argued that Travis had no prior convictions, that the assault was a one-time incident born of stress and miscommunication, that the financial charges were misunderstandings. Then the prosecutor called Rachel Morrison to the stand. I watched Travis's face as Rachel walked into the courtroom, watched the smile disappear, watched his jaw tighten, watched his hands curl into fists even with the handcuffs. Rachel testified for 40 minutes, detailed, specific, devastating. By the time she finished, 2 of the jurors in the box were crying. The judge's expression hadn't changed, but I saw her make several notes. "Does the defense wish to cross-examine?" Judge Martinez asked. Travis's lawyer looked at his client, then at Rachel, then back at the judge. "No, Your Honor." Smart. There was nothing he could ask that wouldn't make things worse. The judge reviewed the evidence, took her time. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Callahan, I'm denying bail. You'll remain in custody, pending trial." Given the severity of the charges, the documented pattern of abuse, and the credible threat to the victim's safety, I'm also issuing a permanent restraining order effective immediately. You are prohibited from any contact, direct or indirect, with Emma Pierce Callahan. That includes letters, phone calls, emails, messages through third parties, or any other form of communication. Violation will result in additional charges. Do you understand? Travis nodded once. His jaw was so tight I could see the muscles jumping. Your trial date is set for March 15th. You're remanded to Suffolk County Jail until that time. The judge's gavel came down. Travis stood. For a moment, I thought he was going to say something. His mouth opened. His eyes found Emma again. But Sharon beat him to it. She stood up in the back of the courtroom, her voice shrill and carrying. "This is a travesty. That woman is lying. My son is innocent. You're all going to rot in hell for this. All of you." 2 bailiffs moved toward her. She kept screaming, kept pointing at Emma, kept calling her a liar, a whore, a manipulator. Emma started shaking. Margaret put an arm around her. The bailiffs escorted Sharon out, still screaming. As they led Travis away, he turned back one last time, looked directly at me, and mouthed 2 words. "This isn't over." No, it wasn't. But he was behind bars. Emma was safe, and I'd made sure he'd never get close enough to hurt her again. We left through the side entrance. Emma was silent the entire drive home. When we got to my penthouse, she went straight to the guest room and closed the door. I stood outside for a moment, listening to her cry, and wondered how many more battles we'd have to fight before this was truly over. Sophie Marie Pierce was born on a Tuesday in June, 6 months after the courthouse hearing. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, red hair like her mother, green eyes like her grandfather, perfect in every way that mattered. Emma held her for the first time and cried, not sad tears, relief tears, joy tears, tears that washed away 6 months of fear and uncertainty and the constant looking over her shoulder. Travis was still in jail. His trial had been postponed twice due to motions from his overworked public defender, but the prosecution's case was airtight. Margaret said plea negotiations were happening. 20 years was the offer on the table. Travis was reportedly considering it. Sharon had tried to visit Emma 4 times during the pregnancy. Showed up at my building with baby gifts, demanding to see her future grandchild. Security turned her away each time. She'd sent letters, dozens of them, all filtered through Margaret's office, none of them reaching Emma. They were evidence now, evidence of harassment, evidence of continued attempts to contact despite court orders. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks before Sophie's birth. Emma got everything: the apartment, her trust fund, full custody of the unborn child. Travis got nothing. 0 visitation rights until Sophie turned 18 and could decide for herself if she wanted contact with her biological father. His lawyer had tried to argue it was too harsh, that every child deserved to know their father. Judge Martinez had looked at the evidence, the pattern of abuse, the forged insurance policies, Rachel's testimony, and said, "This child deserves to be safe. Request denied." I was in the delivery room when Sophie was born, held Emma's hand through 14 hours of labor, watched my daughter become a mother, watched her transform her pain into purpose, her fear into fierce protective love. "She's so small," Emma whispered, touching Sophie's tiny fingers. "How do I keep her safe? How do I make sure she never knows what I went through?" "You teach her to be strong," I said. "You teach her that she's valuable. You teach her that no one has the right to hurt her. You teach her what healthy love looks like. And you show her every day that she deserves respect and kindness and safety." Emma looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "The way you taught me. The way I should have taught you better. If I had, maybe you would have recognized what Travis was sooner. Maybe you would have—" "Mom, no. This wasn't your fault. It wasn't mine either. It was his, only his. We can't carry his guilt." She was right. Therapy had been good for her. Twice a week for 6 months with a trauma specialist who understood domestic violence. Emma was healing. Slowly, but healing. Rachel Morrison came to visit when Sophie was 2 weeks old. She brought a handmade baby blanket, soft yellow with embroidered butterflies. Emma hugged her for a long time without saying anything. "I should have spoken up sooner," Rachel said. "When I heard he was married again, I should have warned you. I was just so scared. The NDA, the threats, I was a coward. You were a survivor," Emma corrected gently. "You did what you needed to do to stay safe. I don't blame you for that. I'm just grateful you found the courage to speak up when it mattered most." They sat together for hours that day. 2 women who'd loved the wrong man. 2 women who'd survived. They'd become unlikely friends, bonded by shared trauma and the knowledge that they'd saved each other in different ways. Rachel had started the foundation she'd talked about, called it the Butterfly Project, after the blanket she'd made Sophie. It provided legal assistance and safe housing for domestic violence survivors. Emma donated $50,000 to get it started. I matched it. Between us and other donors Rachel had found, they'd helped 12 women escape abusive situations in the first 4 months. Emma started painting again. Her new collection was called After the Storm. Bright colors, hope, renewal. She painted Sophie sleeping, Sophie laughing, Sophie simply existing in a world where she was loved and safe and valued. The work was different from her earlier pieces, stronger, more confident, more alive. Her first show was in September. It sold out in 3 days. Art critics called it a masterclass in transforming trauma into transcendence. One piece, a large abstract called 3 Strikes, sold for $42,000. Emma donated the entire amount to the Butterfly Project. We lived together for 8 months. Emma and Sophie in the guest room that became Sophie's nursery. me playing grandmother and bodyguard and support system. It was crowded sometimes, chaotic. I woke up at 2 in the morning more than once to crying babies and exhausted new mothers. I loved every minute of it, but eventually, Emma needed her own space, needed to prove to herself that she could stand on her own. So we found her a new apartment, not in Beacon Hill. Too many memories. Instead, a beautiful 3-bedroom in Back Bay, same building as mine, 4 floors down, close enough that I could be there in 30 seconds if she needed me, far enough that she had independence. The apartment Travis had lived in, we sold. Emma couldn't bear to go back there, couldn't bear to keep anything that reminded her of that chapter of her life. We donated all the furniture to a women's shelter, put the proceeds from the sale into Sophie's college fund. Travis's trial finally happened in November. Emma didn't attend, didn't need to. Rachel testified, I testified. Daniel testified about the evidence. The prosecution played the restaurant security footage, showed the photographs of Emma's injuries, presented the forged insurance documents. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. 25 years. With good behavior, he might get out in 18. Sophie would be an adult by then. Emma would be 50. I'd be 75 if I lived that long. Margaret called with the news. I told Emma while she was feeding Sophie. She didn't react at first, just sat there, processing. Then she looked down at her daughter and said, "It's over. It's really over." Sharon tried one last time to make contact, sent a letter directly to Emma's new address somehow, bypassing all our security measures. The letter was unhinged, blamed Emma for destroying her son's life, said Sophie would grow up knowing her mother was a liar, said God would punish us all for what we'd done to her innocent boy. Margaret filed harassment charges. Sharon got a restraining order of her own, 90 days in county jail for violating the previous court orders. When she got out, she moved to Florida. We heard through various channels that she told everyone there that her son was wrongly imprisoned by a vindictive ex-wife with connections, that he was the real victim. We didn't care. She was gone. Travis was locked up. We were safe. Sophie's first birthday was last week. We had a small party, just family and close friends. Rachel came. Daniel and Margaret came. Jessica, Emma's college roommate who'd slowly reconnected over the past year, came with her new husband. I watched Emma blow out the candle on Sophie's smash cake, watched her laugh as her daughter covered herself in frosting, watched her be happy and free and unafraid. This morning, Emma showed me her latest painting. It's a portrait of Sophie, but behind her, in abstract swirls of color, are the shapes of women. Me, Rachel, Margaret, Jessica. All the women who'd stood with her, fought for her, refused to let her face her demons alone. "I'm calling it The Village," Emma said, "because that's what saved me. Not just you, Mom, all of you. All the women who believed me, who fought for me, who showed me what strength looks like." I looked at the painting and felt something shift in my chest. Pride, relief, hope. "You saved yourself," I told her. "We just stood with you while you did it." She hugged me. Sophie babbled happily from her playpen. Outside, the Boston sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere, Travis Callahan was sitting in a cell, living with the consequences of his choices. Somewhere, Sharon was telling her lies to anyone who'd listen. But here, in this moment, in this space we'd built from the ashes of trauma and fear, we were free. Emma was painting. Sophie was growing. I was watching my daughter become the woman I'd always known she could be. Strong, independent, unbreakable. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Not destroying them, though we'd done that too, but surviving, thriving, building something beautiful from something broken. Emma caught me wiping my eyes. "You okay, Mom?" I smiled. "Better than okay. I'm watching my daughter and granddaughter build the life you both deserve. There's nothing better than that." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you. For everything. For believing me. For fighting for me. For not giving up. Never," I promised. "I will never give up on you. Either of you." Sophie chose that moment to knock over her tower of blocks and laugh with pure, uncomplicated joy. The sound filled the apartment, filled the space between past and future, filled the silence where fear used to live. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that we'd made it. Not just survived, but made it to the other side. Stronger, together, free. The story that started with 3 slaps in a restaurant had ended with 3 women building a life worth living. And that was exactly how it was supposed to be.